Boruto could soon tap into the divine power of an Otsutsuki god, and it has already been teased. With the reveal of Shibai Otsutsuki protecting Boruto from above, we may soon get to see him exceeding his mortal limitations to turn himself into a peerless existence, or at least a peerless transformation, which could come handy to him in different ways. Kishimoto's Samurai 8 has already paved the way for us to believe this possibility, as Hashimaru also obtained the god form later in the story. And now that Two Blue Vortex is hinting a divine entity being responsible for protecting the prodigy, let's decipher the divine intervention to figure out how far Boruto could go in the future. When the story introduced characters like Aida and Daemon, and a literal godly figure who has somehow obtained all the Shinjutsu in existence, which makes him the most supreme entity to ever exist, it already brought in a number of questions for how Boruto was supposed to rank up to their level. In the finale of part 1, Daemon said to Boruto that he wants him to get so strong that they could have a hand-to-hand brawl someday, but Boruto doesn't believe anything like that is even possible. But with the recent developments of the story, I think everything is being set up to make Boruto surpass the cyborgs, as well as everyone who possesses the DNA of Shibai, mainly because the Otsutsuki god has been on his side from the beginning, explaining why they share so many similarities. But how does it prove that Boruto will tap into a brand new transformation? Well, it's not just about the level of these new villains, but also the way the story is taking elements from the prequel to sustain itself as a worthy sequel. Just like how Madara was teased to be a myth and legend in the beginning, and then at some point he did make an appearance in the story, the setup of Shibai Otsutsuki could be similar. And just like how Madara was used as a pawn to pave the way for Kaguya Otsutsuki, we could expect some new character to also make an appearance in the story once the Shibai lore gets properly explained. It could be the same Otsutsuki who was once against him, which is to a huge possibility, cause Samurai 8 has also laid the foundation of a similar plot. Fudo Muyo, the warrior god who seems to be the counterpart of an Otsutsuki god, had an apprentice who turned against him, so Shibai following a similar narrative could be the reason why he needs Boruto is something very plausible. To understand why I believe this might be the case, let's go back to the physiology of an Otsutsuki god and why Shibai needs to preserve Boruto at any cost. According to Amado, after turning into a god, Shibai left his body behind and ascended to a higher plane of existence. Well, what this means is that an Otsutsuki can achieve peerless evolution in his own body, and it's usually not necessary for them to discard their structure just to become gods. This means it was the personal decision of Shibai to become a higher dimensional being. If he has a partner who could have also become an Otsutsuki god, it's not likely for that creature to discard his body just to enter a higher dimension far from the mortal conflict. This means the second missing Otsutsuki god is still in his mortal form, and if not killed, he can definitely be sealed in some way. So Shibai needing Boruto to get rid of his long lost partner could be one of the reasons for him to save the prodigy from fateful events. Now that was how Shibai brought a plot armor to Boruto, but it doesn't necessarily give us any hint for the new powers or transformation that Boruto may be awakening. The only massive link between him and Shibai as of now is the jogan. It's a mythical eye which could belong to the entity and used by the prodigy for some reasons. So how in the world was Boruto able to have this divine dojutsu? What I believe is that Kashin Koji is playing a greater game here. He definitely has an edge over everything with his prescience power, but there's a possible future that he's trying to achieve, and to manifest that possibility into reality, he must have kept some things to himself that could reduce the chances for that happening. Let me provide an example. Both Amado and Koji mentioned Shibai Otsutsuki and his cells, but none of the listeners questioned how the scientist obtained the divine remains. This could be a setup to something big, cause if the remains of the Otsutsuki god were present on the planet from centuries, how come was it possible for Amado to obtain them when there were literally so many other people who could have got their hands on them? You could tell me that it was Jigen who found them and then passed them down to Amado, which is also a possibility for one solid reason. Ishiki's Sukuna Hikuna could be a Shinjutsu that he awakened through the cells of Shibai. This means the Shinjutsu used by Kawaki is not from Ishiki but the Otsutsuki god, and this is how Amado was able to use the foul karma to reactivate these powers in Kawaki. This means all the divine powers used by Kara members, including Kawaki, all belong to Shibai Otsutsuki. A major hint that supports this theory comes from the flashback sequence of Ishiki and Kaguya, where the face of the dominant Otsutsuki was never shown. This could be because he didn't have the Kokugan before, and it only awakened after he got the cells of Shibai injected into his body. The only major flaw in this theory is that Ishiki was shown to shrink himself to enter the body of Jigen, which means he did have a shrinking ability, which is manifested by Kokugan. But this doesn't lower the possibility for Jigen to be the one who gave Amado the cells of Shibai. But one thing that I was wondering was that, what was the actual purpose of the Kara organization, and how come all the members followed the will of Jigen? The only thing that he provided to them in exchange for helping him to cultivate the God tree was some sort of wish getting fulfilled. But some things don't add up here. If Jigen promised Amado some wish, which was most likely to revive his daughter, then how come it made sense for the scientist to have his daughter revived when there wouldn't be any world for them to live in? Now let's assume Jigen was planning to put all the Kara members under infinite Tsukuyomi, something that shouldn't have bothered Amado, cause he could have lived his best dream life without being worried about his world getting destroyed. What could be that one thing which clicked for the scientist, which made him betray Ishiki? Well, according to what was revealed in the manga, Amado figured out the Kama seal and how it could bring dead people back to life, which sounded plausible at first. But what I think eluded Amado to betray Ishiki was nothing but greed. He must have formulated a way to transfer the godly powers of Shibai Otsutsuki into the clone of his daughter. And as we know, he did have a good amount of control over Delta, meaning that he could have not just revived Akebi, but also make her the most formidable person to ever exist. And the fulfillment of his plan just requires Kawaki to implant a Kama on Delta, which may be why they are in the same team. Well, that was the first possibility, which doesn't include Boruto. But the next theory that I'm about to discuss brings clarity to the whole situation, so make sure to subscribe if you find it interesting. Remember when Boruto pointed out his birth date when Amado was narrating the story of his daughter? It made one thing clear, that Boruto's birth and Akebi's death has some correlation. Shibai Otsutsuki, whose cells are being used by Amado, is protecting Boruto from the heavens, and Akebi was said to have died from some incurable disease. The Otsutsuki god has the power of omnipotence, so we would never know if Amado's memories about his daughter's death are real or not. He could have been under the divine spell, which made him see things differently, and only Aida would be able to confirm the flaws in Amado's story. What makes all of this even more complex is that Aida only agreed to the death of Akebi and did not confirm the story of Amado shaking hands with Jigen for the sake of reviving his daughter. One thing to be noted is that Amado had already started to make clones of his daughter way before he met Jigen, but nothing was able to bring her consciousness back. This is when Ishiki's vessel offered him a way out of this situation. He asked him to work for him in return of getting his wish fulfilled. But was it actually Amado's talent to create clones which attracted Jigen, or could it be because he was in possession of a divine material? I guess you already know where this is going. Amado had obtained the cells of Shibai that he tried to implant in his daughter just to grant her godly powers, but just because he injected them without a Kama seal, she ended up dying, and no cloning method was successful at reviving her. This might be when Jigen approached him, and rest is history. Now coming back to Boruto, the moment Akebi was implanted with the cells of Shibai could be the same moment when Boruto was born, and this is how the prodigy ended up having the divine hand on his head. When the cells of Shibai took away one soul, the stars aligned in a way that another soul was granted an interesting fate and lifelong plot armor. So the whole point of Shibai Otsutsuki in saving Boruto is to prevent Amado from misusing his remains in relocating all his divine techniques. Now the role of Koji here is very interesting. As I said earlier, he needs to keep some things hidden from Boruto to prevent the worst future, and since we know that if attention is shifted from Shinju's to Amado, then the world is doomed to destroy, as the plan of the scientist has a lower possibility to happen. I'm saying this because the world got destroyed in multiple timelines, meaning that Amado's plan is not absolute, and even he has failed multiple times. But if the Ten Tails rampage gets prevented successfully, saving Kawaki from getting devoured, then Amado would have a higher chance to fulfill his plan. This may be why Koji did not tell Boruto about the origin of Shibai's cells and the true plans of Amado. He is trying to get rid of Kawaki, which would completely spoil the plans of Amado as well. But looking at how Boruto is hesitant to kill his brother, it seems like the worst future that was showcased in the flash forward will soon come true. It's different than the one that Koji was afraid of, maybe because the Shinjus will soon go down once Kawaki rises to power. So if Akebi gets reincarnated with godly powers, then Boruto will also need to have similar Shinjutsu to properly deal with his opponent. The possibility for a divine transformation is definitely there, considering the level of enemies that Boruto would be facing, who may be beyond Otsutsuki's. The story would most likely use the setup of Amado and his notorious plans after future Kawaki gets handled. And looking at Boruto's unique dojutsu from the future, the divine transformation could actually be hidden within the jogan itself. Well, we will talk about that in some other video. But if you are wondering whether Kashin Koji knows about Boruto's new power or not, check out the video on the left to find out right now. Also, don't forget to subscribe if you are new here, and I will see you next time.